Hey guys, Philosopher here, and today I have my War Offense tier list for the month of August 2021. Now I will tell you, I do this video every month, one of my most popular videos, and this month I held off. And the reason I held off is, this team has been, Infinity Watch has been the focus of War now for a month or two, ever since they were released. But right now, there is a team that is back in the spotlight, and really the meta revolves a lot around Heroes for Hire now that Shang-Chi is out. I needed to test this team in War. I needed to see how the team performed against opponents. Obviously, right now, Shang-Chi is in the game, but only if you core him, and there's no red stars on him, so we haven't seen him to his full potential. But I've seen enough to at least have a sense of how this happens. I didn't want to release a list to you that didn't take this into account. So I'm going to get right into this list and focus on what teams impact and can impact this new meta. And right now, I will just say the meta revolves a lot around what you're going to do to that Heroes for Hire team. There's only one team that we know of right now that reliably beats it, and that's Infinity Watch. New counters may get developed. I know in the beginning everyone had trouble beating Heroes for Hire before they had Shang-Chi, and a counter was developed within a few weeks. But right now, that counter is not widely known. Let's just put it that way. So what I think is going to be an issue for all players right now is judging how many Heroes for Hire are built up in your opponent, in your opponent's helicarrier, how many of them have Shang-Chi, and what your options are to counter them. And for right now, it looks like Infinity Watch is by far if not the best option, pretty much it looks like the only option right now to counter that team. And so they sit really by themselves in tier 1. I've moved these other teams down into their own tier because right now, this old counter that exists, Black Bolt, Silver Surfer, Kestrel, and then some combination of like Yo-Yo, Nick Fury, Emma Frost, Crystal. Some people throw in characters like Doc Ock or Zemo. That used to counter Heroes for Hire, but it doesn't counter Heroes for Hire well with Shang-Chi. People who are bringing this counter in are at best killing one character. You basically are guaranteed to have to 2-tap that defense. So Infinity Watch is really on its own tier, which means that you have to be very careful about where you use your Infinity Watch. Because particularly if the other side has Infinity Watch on defense and Heroes for Hire on defense, you can run out of teams. And so that really brings me to another team. So I've been asked a lot of questions about the Secret Avenger team and where they should be used. And you can see how highly I think of the Secret Avengers by having them this high up in War Offense. Now, this is the Secret Avengers with Kestrel, but they are a very, very strong team. They can kill a lot of stuff if you use them on War Offense. And frankly, they can be lifesavers for you if you are using them with Kestrel in particular. And even without Kestrel, they can do some good work. I will tell you that I have been in situations where I have had to use Heroes for Hire, or I should me personally, but my alliance has had to use has had to counter a Heroes for Hire team or had a counter or a Infinity Watch team when we didn't have enough Infinity Watch left. And using the Secret Avengers with Kestrel is a way to do that. And it's not perfect. It's not nearly as good as using Infinity Watch, but it can be a reliable substitute on a punch down if your team is very well built and has the T4s and so forth. Now, here you notice I have Kestrel on the team. As you can see, Kestrel's used on a lot of spots on this list. She is such a key character right now. You have to be very careful where you use your Kestrel. So some of the key strategic choices that I'm making as a war captain in my alliance is, for each war is, where do we use our Infinity Watch? Where do we use our Kestrel? How are we using Secret Avengers? So on and so forth. Because that is really going to determine how well you're doing against your opponent. So Kestrel here elevates this entire team because Maria Hill has summons that'll do a lot of pings that Kestrel, they can hit the enemies with defense down and generate those out of turn pings. Fury can do the same thing. Namor or any real other fifth character, it can be Zemo or any other very good war offense character here in the fifth slot. This team can literally take on some of the best defenses if they're well built, maybe punching down, that sort of thing. These three teams are basically in their own tier. I mean, Infinity Watch is the only one that can counter Shang-Chi. But even if you're talking about Heroes for Hire or Infinity Watch, I mean, this at least counters Heroes for Hire without Shang-Chi. This could kind of, if you're punching down and you have a really well-built team, can sort of counter these teams, Infinity Watch or Heroes for Hire, not reliably, but they can do it. But then the rest of these teams really just can't. They are relegated to trying to counter the other stuff. So this is almost like its own game up here, where you're focusing on the Infinity Watches and Heroes for Hires in terms of the enemy team. The rest of the stuff, these are sort of like I wouldn't say the pawns, but these are the bishops and so forth. The queen is up here, maybe Infinity Watch, and really what you want to do is save your big pieces, your big weapons for the best opposing defenses. And then these other war offenses can do less. Okay, so you could see here on its own tier, I have Secret Avengers with Fury with a different fifth. And you can do, for example, to give you a sense of what that team can do. Here you go. Here is a very good team here that you can see it's obviously very well built, but with Zemo as the fifth, it counters the Uncanny Doom team with Minerva, a very strong team, and Squirrel Girl, right? This has got a lot going for it. It was easily countered, obviously in a punch down, but countered by Secret Avengers with Zemo as the fifth. So you can do good things with the Secret Avengers team on war offense. That's the best move for Secret Avengers, in my opinion. Kestrel, similarly, also very useful on war offense. Generally, I think better used there because she can counter the Uncanny. Certainly, she does quite a number on Phoenix, right? But she can counter a whole variety of teams. Obviously, can be useful because her ult prevents revive on here against Heroes for Hire as well. Now, this is a team that I've had on my list for a long time. It's a team that I had put a lot of thought into, kind of developing. I know others, I'm sure, you had similar thoughts when Kestrel first came out. But basically what this team does is you use Kestrel, and the focus here is on her ability and her passive, where if an enemy with defense down is attacked, she attacks that enemy with 400% damage out of turn damage. So, basically what you do is you have these other characters who are basically, I would say, spare parts, and they can make a full team with Kestrel because Nick Fury has summons, Ultron has summons. Namor slows down the enemy team because his ult removes half a turn, 500 turn meter. Falcon's special speeds up his team. And so essentially, the combination of Namor and Falcon can give a lot of turns to your team. Ultron also has a bot, Ultron Accelerator, that on its basic can remove turn meter from Doom, and this is a very good kind of Doom killer team. This is sort of, the end of this tier of characters who are using some of the best characters in the game, the most OP, power creep heavy characters in the game. Now we're going to get into some synergy teams. I will tell you, New Warriors are not on this team. I have had people ask me, where do I think New Warriors are going to be and this and that. I don't project that stuff because I don't just make stuff up and speculate. I don't know. I've never played with Cloak and Dagger. I don't know how good they're going to be, and I don't know where they're going to be useful in war. Deathpool, I will tell you, doesn't have an obvious spot in war. People use her on war offense with the Supernaturals. People use her on defense with the Brawlers. I think she's not going to really shine until this full team is out there. I do think the team will be good, but that's just my guess. I don't bet on that or where they're going to be useful in war. But once we get past those Secret Avenger Kestrel teams, we get to synergy teams. And I think it's fair to say that the best synergy team out there is Shadowland. And they still remain that. If you're not in the non-Infinity Watch division. Now, obviously, Secret Avengers also a team, but they're not a full 5-person team. This is a 5-person team that's still good. it's starting to feel the effects of power creep. If you were playing this game 6 months ago, you remember when we all got very excited about White Tiger's damage. Not anymore, right? Her damage is good, but it's not insane levels the way that Kestrel or the Infinity Watch are, but it's very good. And this team can kill a lot of teams. Can it kill a Doom team? Yeah, it can be tricky. It will certainly beat the slow Doom teams, the teams that, like Doom Marauders or Doom with some random characters. It has a lot of trouble against a team like Uncanny Doom or Brotherhood Doom. It's a very tricky fight. But against teams like Heroes for Hire, it can punch way down on Heroes for Hire. But that's about it. And then, in terms of Infinity Watch, it has absolutely no luck. And one of the determiners of success is really whether Hanger is up. Because if Hanger is up, that means that the team spawns with Deflect, which means that Moon Knight gets 20% additional speed bar. So that is really a determiner of how well this team performs. Even without Hanger, a very good team. But there is a clear delineation in my mind between that, the teams in this tier and this stuff up here. In other words, Shadowland can only really counter Heroes for Hire without Shang-Chi on a massive punch down. I've done it. You've seen it on this channel a long while ago, but it's a very difficult fight even on that punch down. Now, next team is XFactor, and this team's stock in War has really, in many ways, been on the rise lately. We've gotten a lot of use out of XFactor because it really is the best Doom killer team. You can throw in Rhino and put in between Longshot and Shatterstar against Brotherhood Doom. You can use it with, let's say, Namor against Uncanny Doom. Those are the two hardest Doom defenses. And, of course, this team does well against a whole variety of other teams. I mean, not just Marauders and teams like that are pretty power-crept at this point, but really a wide variety of War defenses out there. It does not beat Heroes for Hire. It's not going to do anything on that tier. But, right under Shadowlands, I say this would probably be the next best all-around War offense team that you can use in a variety of different situations. Now, I will say this, another thing about this team that is worth noting is, unlike Shadowland, this team does not require nearly as many T4s. I think once you have the Longshot and Shatterstar passive, the team can function, although there's a number of other T4s that are, I would say, essential to have the team reach its potential. Shadowland basically doesn't work until you get a whole bunch of T4s. It's a much more T4-intensive team. But they're both very, very good. And Shadowland, I think, is maybe slightly better once it's realized its potential. All of the teams on this list are being evaluated based on the full team, at its fullest potential. If you have the team fully unlocked and geared up, I'm not taking into account, your low-geared team. The next team on this list is Black Order. You may be surprised. Why is Black Order all the way down here? I know some people have invested a lot in their Black Order and are very excited about the team. And I will just say its best days are long behind it. It's just not as useful as Shadowland or XFactor. Unlike those teams, it really doesn't counter the Doom teams all that well. It also does absolutely nothing of value against the Heroes for Hire, certainly not Infinity Watch. So those real top tier defenses, it doesn't really do anything against. It's a good all around team. It's not what it once was, and it's a team that frankly you don't need for anything. I mean, it can certainly do very well against Uncanny without Doom. Once Doom's added, it's really a very iffy fight. You can often lose, very tricky fight. So really, it's just a team that, sometimes we're using even on more defense because it's just not as necessary as it once was now that so many new teams have been released. All right, now that brings me to the next team on my list, and I considered moving this team down. That's Skill Military. It's definitely a very good team. And I've kept it on here because it really has a variety of uses in War. It's a very good War offense team. But when it first came out, everyone was excited because this team totally annihilates the mercenaries. And really, for a long time in War, what you were seeing was almost entirely Shuri mercenaries at the highest levels. That generally was regarded as the best mercenary team. The mercenaries scale really well, and until Skill Military was out, there was no strong counter to the team at very high levels, 500, 600, 700K. Mercenary teams couldn't be countered with anything other than Hydra 3.0, which we'll talk about in a minute, or Black Order. Now, this team just annihilates those teams. However, opposing teams now are using a lot of Ultimus mercs. So what they'll do is they will have, the standard core mercenary characters, which are, of course, Taskmaster, Merc Lieutenant, Merc Rykard. They will throw in Korath, which I have not built up, and Ultimus. And Ultimus has an ability that just erases characters with Taunt, and he will do a number on Red Guardian. Now, Skill Military can still beat the Ultimus Mercs, but it's a more dicey fight. It really depends on the size of your Red Guardian versus their Ultimus, that sort of thing. If your opponent has got a 7 red Ultimus that's G15 or something like that, you really do need Hydra to beat it. But, this is supposed to be a universal list. And what I will say is that Skill Military can still beat that team. It depends on the size of the Red Guardian versus Ultimate. And, it does beat a bunch of other things. It beats things like, Sinister Six and Wave 1 to the extent it still exists. And it can beat Marauders. It can beat some Doom teams, but it's not 100% reliable against that. But it's a good all-around team. It does need a lot of T4s for sure. I really can put that here for Shadowlands as well. Shadowland needs T4s, but it's a good team. The next team on our list is Astonishing XMen, and I know this may surprise some of you. I get a lot of players, whether they're in Gold 4 or Platinum 1, which is a level where I am not experienced at right now, telling me, like, look, Astonishing XMen is such an important team for us because everyone has them built up for the Doom raids, but they don't have some of these other teams built, and I think that's a fair point. But I will just tell you that if you do have all the teams built up, this team is really not that important. It's just okay-ish as a war offense team. It's good if you are trying to counter teams that have summons. So, this team does really well against like people who throw Secret Avengers, or they'll put Kestrel with Shield or something on defense. I think neither of those teams are good on defense, and part of the reason why is because Astonishing X-Men can eat them for lunch. But this is a team that otherwise is just, not all that fantastic in war. It's okay. It doesn't beat, obviously it's not going to beat a Heroes for Hire or Infinity Watch. It's not going to beat the Doom teams generally, unless it's a Doom team that doesn't have, it's not Uncanny Doom or not Brotherhood Doom. In other words, a Doom team that it just lets you target the Doom bots for free turn meter from Jubilee's passive, where it fills the speed bar by 25% on enemy death from the start. So, generally speaking, this team, at least at my level in war where we have all the teams built up, is just, a spare team that we use to kind of counter lower meta teams, older power creep teams. So it's a good team, but nothing to write home about in war. Kind of, I would say this is about as plain vanilla or kind of, average as a war offense team gets. Now, let's talk about the next team on my list, and that's Hydra 3.0. I want to explain this team. This is one of the teams that moved up the list from last month because of the rise of Ultimus Mercs. So what is this team? How does it work? So this team, it was a team I used to talk a lot about before Skill Military came out because it was really the best mercenary counter at the time. And the team is centered around Baron Zemo, Red Skull, and Hydra Grenadier. You need to have Grenadier have a higher damage stat than Zemo, so you can see mine is 23,689. Zemo is 23,932. You may say, well, Philosopher, Zemo's higher. Well, actually, no, because Red Skull's passive gives an additional 10% damage to Hydra Minion Alley. So with the 10% damage, my Grenadier is higher. It doesn't. By the way, the passive for Grenadier that gives extra damage does not kick in until he takes a turn. So you need that one doesn't count. Use just the Red Skull passive that counts. But in any event, you bring those three characters in against mercenaries, and Taskmaster will put Taunt on Grenadier because he puts Taunt on the character with the highest damage. And the enemy will keep attacking. The mercenaries will keep attacking Grenadier. He keeps dying, and Red Skull keeps reviving him. That's basically how that works. And in the meantime, Zemo takes on and kills the mercenaries, particularly the minions, because he gets a lot of extra damage against minions, 900% damage and so forth. And he puts Disrupted on Merc Rycard and a whole bunch of other things. So those three are the core. And then who else you take with it depends on the team. If you're facing a team like Shuri Mercs, you really want to have Drax or Red Guardian, because Shuri is going to put defense up, and then Killmonger will attack the enemy with the lowest health. And the simplest way to deal with that is just to bring in a taunt. I used to bring in Winter Soldier as the 5th when I was going up against Shuri Mercs more. Winter Soldier puts an unblockable heal block right here on Merc Rycard, which is very useful. But you could also bring in Hydra Sniper. Hydra Sniper is very nice because he provides speed to the team, and he can provide on one of his abilities offense up. You have to be careful, though. If you don't have the T4 here, sometimes he'll put offense up on Zemo, but not on Grenadier. And then the Zemo will have the highest damage, and Taskmaster will delete Zemo. So you have to be careful at Hydra Sniper. But if you're facing Ultima's Mercs, you don't need a taunt. So you can bring in Hydra Sniper and Winter Soldier, or Hydra Sniper and one of the other Hydra minions. But I do think Hydra Sniper is the best, although you have to watch out if you don't have that T4 on the passive. All right. Or excuse me, that T4 not on the passive, the T4 on his special. All right, now we're going to go to the next team on the list, and that's a team that's very similar. It's called Hell Hydra. This is a team that was popular at lower levels in war for quite some time. I never used to use it because I needed Hela and Zemo for different teams. Now that Hela is not needed for Hela Naturals, she's kind of a floater. So this team can be used generally against a team like Marauders. It does well against a number of teams. But basically the way this team works is Zemo goes first, applies ability block. Hela spreads it to the whole team. And there you go. And, if you're facing, let's say, a shield team or something like that, or a mercenary team that targets the highest damage, you can bring in Grenadier. And Red Skull Grenadier works very well with Zemo and gives, focus and so forth anyway. All right, now we're going to Tier 4, and these teams are not nearly as important. And our first team on the list is Symbiotes, and it's really there was a lot of debate when I was asking other people for their advice. This is, I would say, a list that I get a lot of feedback on before I present it to you guys. I do update it. It's linked below. But Symbiotes is a team that, to me, is more of a niche team. It's often seen in defense at my level, and it's best against characters that have summon. So it's teams that have summon. So if you're facing a shield team, if you're facing a Secret Avenger team, if you're facing a Sinister Six, Symbiotes do very well. If you're facing a team that does not have summons, it's not usually as good of a counter. It does well against Doom teams that don't have something like a Colossus or Blob, Blob and Juggernaut that are going to prevent the Symbiotes from getting to the Doombots and getting turn meter that way. But the Carnage passive really, giving the speed bar to the team really helps as long as there are summons. If there aren't summons, the team that's right below them on the list, X-Force, is a better team. Now, I know a lot of you are going to say, well, X-Force is awesome. Why aren't they higher? This and that. Frankly, this team used to be amazing, but it's just been super power crept. And really the way the team works is you need a huge Negasonic, and Negasonic needs to use her ultimate to drop an enemy under 50%, which then will give speed bar to X-23, who will kill the enemy team. If Negasonic doesn't do that, whether because there's defense up in the enemy or because they're facing a team that's newer and there's power creep in the game, and she doesn't get anyone under 50%, this team can die in a hurry. This is just a power creep team at this point, so it's good. It's still useful, but it's useful mostly against old meta teams, not really useful against the newest stuff out in the game. All right, I'm not going to go through these other teams as much. They have some use in the game, but these three teams are teams that really are niche once you have the other teams built up. Doc Ock Sinister Six is useful if the enemy's got Black Order because it can punch up high against Black Order. It can also do really well against a team like Wave 1 that relies on buffs, basically due to the Doc Ock flip. But otherwise, this is a team that, doesn't see much use. It's thrown on war defense. It's kind of a second-rate war defense, or it's on the bench. It's, or Doc Ock the team is split up and Doc Ock is used on his own. Brotherhood 2.0 is fantastic if the enemy has symbiotes on defense. It's good against Pym Tech and things like that, Technerva, some of these old defenses that I don't see anymore in war. Young Avengers, whatever, that sort of thing. It's good against that. That's about it. It used to be much more important than it is now. I see it more often on defense than I do on offense. And then Uncanny X-Men without, with Beast is still got some use, although it's obviously Beast is almost entirely used on X-Men. You can throw in Ultron, on the team to kind of semi-replace Beast, and they're just okay. Now we're going to teams that I will just say are backup teams. These in my level are basically just relegated to the bench for the most part, or very rare circumstances. Hella Natural, this is where you take Elsa off the Supernatural team and throw in Hela. This was a fantastic counter to old school Wave 1 Avengers, but now that Black Widow isn't on the team, it's not nearly as good. It can counter Sinister Six, but it's pretty much a team that's on the bench now for us. Fantastic 4 plus Ultron, just very power creep team, not entirely reliable, may be useful at your level. The rest of these teams I leave on here just because people tell me at their level and where they still see them, and ask me where they would be on the list. And these are all teams that are pretty power crept and I never see in war anymore. All right, so if you like this video, smash that like button. Subscribe to this channel. If you have comments, leave them below or go to my Discord. That's linked below as well. Obviously, this list is linked below, and it's always kept up on my Discord. But on my Discord, we have lots of conversations about Alliance War. You should also check out my Twitch stream. That's linked below as well. Have lots of great conversations there.